Hi everyone, this is my video discussion board response for chapter 4 of the Marzano text. And the way I'm doing my response is I'm just going to briefly talk about each exercise and my takeaways from the exercise itself. So just starting with the first one, which was 4.1, it actually asked you to think about the test assessment items that are referred to as selected response items. And it had several examples of those in this exercise, and they asked us to look and see how we could take those examples and turn them into questions that reflected that particular type of assessment. My biggest takeaway from doing this exercise is that you really have to make sure that the students are able to show that they understand the standard when you're doing any type of selected response question. The reason being is that because you have these choices there, sometimes it can be left to just guessing, or answer choices can turn into hints. And so you're sometimes left wondering, does the student really know the information, or are they guessing, or is it just process of elimination? So for me, looking at the specific numbers for this exercise, number 2 was matching, and number 5 was a multiple response question, and number 6 was fill in the blank. To me, those are questions that kind of lend themselves a little better to making the students prove that they know the information. For example, with the multiple response, and the students are going to have to choose all the ones that are correct. It's not necessarily just this is the one answer. Choose all the ones that would be correct. So they have to really know the information that they're talking about. The same with fill in the blank, because there's no answer choices given, and the same with matching, because with the matching questions, I've learned through this course that you should really have more answers that are needed to help the students show you again that they really truly know the correct answers, and it's not just a process of elimination type situation. Moving on to exercise 4.2. In this particular exercise, it was on talking about the extended constructed response versus demonstration tasks, and when you should do which one. For this particular exercise, they gave you a couple of different subjects, and you could go through and decide which one you thought was best and why, and what you could do. My biggest takeaway after looking at the entire section about this in the Marzano text is that really, if you think about it, you can use either type of question in any subject area. It just might be that a particular subject area lends itself, or is a little easier to do so. But specifically, it did show on page 72 in the Marzano text that especially for demonstration type tasks, you are thinking about if the student would be able to perform the skill or the process, and if they can do that, then you probably could go ahead and try to use a demonstration type of assessment. But again, it's my feeling that you could use both constructed response, extended types, or demonstration types for all subject areas. You just have to be a little bit more creative for different standards in different subject areas, but it can be done. And our last exercise was 4.3, and those were the review questions for this chapter in its entirety. And I'm going to skip number 1 and go straight to number 2. Number 2 is the one that was asking about what you would do if you noticed an aberrant pattern when you scored your tests. And this particular question made me definitely reflect. That's one, of course, that's one of the standards for graduate candidates. But to me, that's also the answer for this question, because if you notice that, then as a teacher or an educator, you definitely will want to reflect on the assessment that you gave. We know that teachers aren't always perfect. Test questions that we make aren't always perfect. Tests that we are given by the state or our district are not always perfect. There's going to be some flaws. So I'm sure all of us have been in a situation where we might have noticed maybe an assignment or an assessment where something might be off. Maybe it's poorly written. Maybe the scoring didn't reflect the way that you thought it would. Either way, it's okay to look back at your test design and reevaluate it and see if there's some things that can be tweaked, so that the scoring is actually more reflective of what you intended, the intended results. Skipping to number 3 in this exercise, this question was asking about, let's see, our scale. Explain why a well-constructed scale is critical to scoring a demonstration and unobtrusive observation. So for this one, even though you have demonstration and unobtrusive observation, it will give students, more personal input and personalization of how they will show their learning. And the understanding of the scale still must reflect whether or not the student truly understands. So yes, you want them to be able to give their answer in their own words or be able to show the process, but the scale is still important. It's there for a reason. It's there especially so that you can make sure that the standards that you taught are being addressed through the assessment. But the scale is also there so that as a teacher, you're trying to objectively score what they're showing you in a demonstration or unobtrusive observation. You just want to make sure that you're still scoring it as objectively as possible, because this kind of assessment could go the other way and you could be being a little bit too subjective in your scoring. So the scale is there for a reason. I skipped number 1 on this exercise because really this is what my biggest takeaway from this whole exercise and chapter is. This is the question that was asking about how are selected response items and short constructed response items typically used to design a paper pencil test that addresses scores of the 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0 content. And our final question was, what were some takeaways for your own test designs? And this is it, is the fact that when I think about designing a test, it's not necessarily that I'm going to use only one type of question. That the selected response questions are going to be really good for getting a simple 2.0 score. But I don't want my whole test to be 2.0. I want to make sure that my assessment is challenging the students and it's going from the base level but also to the more complex level. So really the only way I can do that is to make sure that I have different types of test questions, and those test questions can meet the requirements for different scale levels. So that was really my biggest takeaway for the whole chapter. Also, I did just, for me personally, using the Marzano text and then comparing it with the measurement and assessment text, I just always like the fact that as they explain the different types of test questions, they also give examples. So it helps me personally I'm more of a visual person, so it helps me to see, okay, well, this is what they consider a multiple response question. They describe it, but also let me look at it. So I really went back and forth with this text and the measurement and assessment text to just help me get a clear understanding of different types of questions when looking at these exercises, and also just being able to look at those examples was just really helpful for me and made it a little bit more concrete. Thank you for listening to my video response on chapter 4, and I look forward to any responses that you might send my way. Thanks.